You have a vision for your life, a clear one. Maybe it's starting that business, getting in shape, moving to a new city. You've thought about it 100 times, you've made the plan, you've watched the videos, and then nothing happens. You care so much it almost hurts. But somehow, every single day, you end up doing the comfortable thing instead of the right thing. And by the time it's midnight, you're lying in bed thinking about your dream again, promising yourself tomorrow will be different. If that's you, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to explain changed everything for me. And it has nothing to do with motivation, discipline, or mindset hacks. It goes much deeper than that. It's about what's literally happening inside your brain. Here's the first thing I want you to understand. You are not the problem. I know that sounds like a feel good thing to say, but I mean it scientifically. The gap between dreaming and doing isn't a character flaw, it's a neurological design feature. And once you understand it, everything starts to make sense. Your brain has two systems that are constantly at war with each other. The first is what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the DMN. This is the part of your brain that activates when you're daydreaming, imagining your future, fantasizing about who you could be. It's incredibly powerful. It's the engine behind every big vision you've ever had. When you close your eyes and picture yourself living that life you want, that's your DMN firing up, and it feels amazing. There's actual dopamine release just from imagining a positive future. The second system is your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, initiating action, and dealing with discomfort. This is the part that has to actually do the work. Here's the cruel irony. The more vividly you imagine your goal, the less pressure your brain feels to pursue it. There's a famous study by psychologist Gabriele Oettingen, where she found that people who fantasized most positively about their goals without accounting for obstacles actually achieved less. The brain, in a sense, treats the fantasy as a partial reward. It gets a hit of that good feeling without doing any of the work. So every time you lie in bed dreaming about your future, your brain says, great, we're making progress. And then it lets you go to sleep consequence free. You're being outsmarted by your own dopamine system. But there's a second piece to this. Even when you do try to start, even when you open the laptop, pull out the journal, lace up the shoes, something stops you. A weird, inexplicable freeze. You suddenly need water. You check your phone, you decide now isn't quite the right time. This is what neuroscientist Andrew Huberman describes as the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, a region of your brain that activates when you try to do hard things you don't want to do. Think of it as a friction zone. Every time you attempt something uncomfortable or uncertain, this part of your brain sends a signal that feels like dread, resistance, or vague anxiety. Your brain isn't saying, this is dangerous. It's registering, this is unfamiliar and costs energy. And evolutionarily, that was a problem worth avoiding. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of burning calories on uncertain outcomes. Conservation was survival. But you're not trying to survive a savannah. You're trying to build a life, and your brain hasn't fully caught up. So the loop looks like this. You dream, you feel good, you try to start, the resistance hits, you retreat back to the dream. You feel good. Again, a comfortable, dream-filled, progress-free loop. And the longer you stay in it, the more your identity starts to quietly shift. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who does things and start thinking of yourself as someone who wants things. That distinction matters more than almost anything else. Okay, now we get to the part that matters, because understanding your brain is only useful if you use it against itself. Here are three shifts that actually work, grounded in neuroscience, not hype. Fix one, shrink the action until resistance disappears. The resistance isn't triggered by the goal, it's triggered by the size of the first step. Your brain doesn't resist. Write a book, it resists. Open a blank document and figure out what to say. That's a huge, ambiguous, energy expensive task. No wonder it freezes. What your brain can't resist? A task so small, it feels almost stupid. James Clear calls this the 2-minute rule. Neuroscience backs it up. Small, concrete actions bypass the resistance loop because they don't register as a threat. So the rule is simple. Never start with the full thing. Start with the version so tiny you'd be embarrassed to say you didn't do it. Open the document, write one sentence, put on the shoes, and walk to the end of the driveway. The goal isn't the 2 minutes. The goal is that once you start, the brain's completion bias kicks in, and suddenly stopping feels worse than continuing. Momentum is a neurological trap. Set it in your favor. Fix 2. Use implementation intentions, not willpower. Willpower is a resource, it depletes. And most people try to run their entire life on it, which is like trying to drive cross country on a half tank of gas. Implementation intentions work differently. This strategy is backed by over 100 studies. Instead of saying, I'll work on my goal this week, you say, I will do X at Y time and Z location. Specifically, I will work on my business idea at 7 a.m. at the kitchen table before I check my phone. What this does neurologically is pre-decide the behavior. The decision has already been made. So when 7 a.m. comes, there's no negotiation, no weighing of options, no willpower needed. The prefrontal cortex doesn't have to fight the limbic system in real time. The fight already happened, and your future self won. People who use implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through. That's not a small effect. That's transformational. Fix 3. Attack the fantasy, not just the behavior. Remember how pure positive visualization actually reduces action? The antidote is a technique called WHOOP, developed by Gabrielle Oettingen herself. Wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. You still get to dream, but you don't stop there. After you visualize the outcome, you immediately ask, what is the biggest internal obstacle that could stop me? Not external, internal. External obstacles are excuses. Internal obstacles are the truth, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, the habit of comfort. Then you make a plan. If that obstacle shows up, then I will. You're essentially writing a script for the moment your brain tries to retreat. You're giving your prefrontal cortex a preloaded response so it doesn't have to improvise under pressure. This technique has been shown in clinical studies to significantly increase follow-through on health goals, academic goals, and professional goals across all age groups. Here's something nobody talks about enough. You can have the perfect system, the implementation intentions, the tiny habits, the WHOOP technique, all of it working, and then life gets busy for a week, you miss a few days, and just like that, you're back to square one, lying in bed, dreaming again like none of it ever happened. This isn't a failure of discipline, it's a failure of identity. And it might be the most important thing in this entire video. Neuroscientist and psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Siegel describes the brain as an anticipation machine. At every moment, it's predicting what's coming next based on what has always come before. And one of the most powerful predictions your brain makes is about you, who you are, how you behave, what you do when things get hard. Your brain has built a model of your identity, and every single day it works to confirm that model. If your model says, I'm someone who starts things and doesn't finish them, and it was built over years of doing exactly that, then your brain will unconsciously steer you back toward that pattern every single time. Missing one workout doesn't just mean you missed a workout. To your brain, it's evidence. Evidence that the old model was right all along. And the moment you accept that evidence, the identity solidifies a little more. This is why so many people feel like they're fighting themselves. They are. Their actions are trying to move in one direction while their identity is pulling in the other, and identity almost always wins. So how do you change it? You change it through small acts of identity voting. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. So instead of asking, how do I get motivated to do this? Start asking, what would the person I want to become do right now? That question rewires the framing entirely. You stop negotiating with your feelings and start making a choice about your identity. And when you follow through, even on something tiny, you're not just completing a task, you're casting a vote. Over days and weeks, something shifts. The brain's anticipation machine starts predicting a different version of you. The pullback to zero gets weaker. The actions start to feel less like struggle and more like expression because you're no longer fighting your identity. You're becoming it. This is the long game, and it starts with the next 5 minutes. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this, You are not lazy. You're not someone who just isn't built for big things. You have a brain that was designed for a different world, a world where dreaming was free and action was risky. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. The gap between who you are and who you are and who you want to be. Doesn't close by wanting it more. It closes by understanding the system you're operating inside and then engineering your environment, your habits, and your starting conditions so that action becomes easier than avoidance. If part of what's been stopping you is not knowing what you're actually building toward, the Life Reset Journal helps you figure that out. Decide in advance exactly when and where you'll do it, and look your obstacles in the eye before they come looking for you. That's just neuroscience. Now, go do the one small thing. I'll see you in the next one.